Welcome to Bibliophiles Anonymous, episode 16. I'm Denise.
And I'm Jess.
So, how much reading have you gotten done lately?
Not a lot. Real life has a tendency to get in the way sometimes, and that's I've kind of been in a funk lately. Some stuff has happened, and I haven't really been in the mood to read.
Yeah, that can happen. And I've been kind of sluggish reading this week myself, but it's been kind of a busy week for me, so.
I mean, the good news is I am like a quarter of the way through Sabriel.
Good.
So, when I do read, I'm making progress.
Right. Especially since we're supposed to talk about that book next week, I believe.
Yeah, I'll be done by then.
Yeah.
It's one of those that's going to go really quickly when I actually start reading.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And it's really good so far. I'm really enjoying it. So.
It's really interesting. Yeah. This is one I think that I'll actually continue reading the series at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've also been reading Sabriel by Garth Nix. And yeah, that is going to be our main discussion topic for next week because it's the next Tavern Book Club book. So I've been reading that. Let's see, what else have I been reading? I finished The Time Quartet by Madeleine L'Engle. So I think I talked about A Swiftly Tilting Planet last week, and then I also finished Many Waters. I can't remember if it was last week or this week because my brain is just, it's all running together.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I finished City of Glass by Cassandra Clare because I'm working on reading that series, and I'm finally up to where I can read the books in that series that I haven't read yet.
Yay!
So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I had read the original 3 books that, well, it was going to be a trilogy, and then they decided to add to it.
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize until much later. But that's okay. So I'm going to start, City of Fallen Angels, I believe?
Yeah.
At some point. I haven't started it yet. I'm trying to finish Sabriel first and then go from there. Oh, and I'm still reading Deadline by Mira Grant with Mark Reeds. But I'm going to be reading that one for like the next month. So I'm not going to tell you I'm reading it every week.
Well, I'm pretty much, the only thing I'm reading right now is Sabriel. I finished, we talked about Graceling. I finished it. And I finished Notorious 19 by Janet Ivanovich, which I mentioned last week. And then I started Sabriel. And that's pretty much it as far as my reading has gone. But we're still trying to clear everything out of my grandmother's house. And because somebody's renting it, and it's got to the point where she had gas heat, and we're almost out of gas to keep the heat on to keep the water pipes from freezing. So we've got to get everything out so they can move in and buy a tank of gas.
Yeah, that's going to take up some of your free time there.
Yeah, we've moved a lot of stuff. I mean, it's pretty much now it's just a matter of what little stuff is left, getting it in boxes and getting it into our shop. And the big furniture, like the couch and the entertainment center. But the guy that's moving in, him and one of his buddies, they're going to come move the really heavy stuff, which is fine with me because I had to move that couch once before and it almost broke my hand. So hopefully once that is said and done, I'll have a little more time to read.
Well, then let's just move right into our main discussion then this week because I have a feeling that we're probably going to talk about it for a decent amount of time.
Probably.
Because it involves venting, and
yes,
if there's one thing that you and I can do for an extended period of time, it's rant about something.
Yes, we're very good at that.
Yes. So today's main topic, we're taking it from this blog on the internet called The Broke and the Bookish. And they have a feature every week called Top 10 Tuesday. And one of the topics that they are getting ready to have here in a couple of weeks, but I saw it and I thought that it would be perfect for us, was the most frustrating characters you've ever read about in a book.
Yeah.
And, there's been quite a few of them. For the most part, I'm pretty forgiving with characters. There's been very few that I've actually just flat out hated.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. There's not a lot of them, but it's like the ones that are vastly make up for the ones that are not.
Yes, that is very true. And I don't know why it is. I mean, even like characters that you're supposed to dislike or that are supposed to be, evil or conniving or whatever, I find reasons to either like them or at least just find them interesting so that they don't annoy me. But there are several characters that I just flat out hate reading because they're just so irritating.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, it's bad when you find characters like that turn you off from an entire series.
Yeah.
Because I've had that happen.
Well, why don't you start then?
Most people who read fantasy and science fiction like we do have at least attempted or want to attempt to read The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan.
Uh-huh.
I made that attempt. I got to book 4 and I gave up because it's like almost every character in it drove me batty. Especially Rand al'Thor, the main character. Oh my lord. I mean, I would get so mad at him that I would literally throw the book across the room. And these are pretty good sized books. They could do some damage. And all of the women. I mean, it was horrible. I made it to book 4 and I was like, look, you know what? I can't take this. And I have discovered since then that Wheel of Time is one of those things that people either really, really love or really, really hate.
Yeah, I haven't read any of those. I think I considered it or I was going to, and I found the first book at a library sale, and I think I bought it for like $1 because it was, Robert Jordan, Wheel of Time. Everybody has to read that one, right? It's like part of the fantasy literary canon. You have to read it.
Yeah.
And I just figured I would do it, and then I don't know where that book ended up. I think it probably got donated at some point, like to the used bookstore or something. I don't know, but I don't have it anymore, so it just never got read. But yeah, I've heard the same thing. People either worship that series or they loathe it with every fiber of their being.
Yeah,
There's no
I
middle
come
ground.
down firmly in the loathe category because it's like Rand al'Thor is one of those protagonists that if he would just do what he's told, things would work out. But no, he wants to go complicate things. He says, I don't, it's been so long since I've read it that I really can't go into detail about it because I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember, especially the first book, that numerous times he would just frustrate me so bad that I would actually throw the book. I would get so mad and I would close it and I would throw it across my bedroom. I'm just like, oh my god. So I'm like, okay, maybe the series will get better. Maybe things will improve. And at book 4, when I'm still throwing books across the room, I'm like, you know what? I should probably just stop.
Yeah, maybe it's not for you.
Yeah, it's just not for me. I mean, and part of the problem is if you've ever seen one of these books, they're all probably at least 600 pages.
Oh, wow.
All of them. Every book in the series, up until like maybe the last 3 or 4, are all like 600 pages long. And most of what's in that 600 pages is unnecessary descriptive writing that we could really live without.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't write descriptive in a good way. It's more like, okay, I do not need to know the family history of every mouse we pass between here and there. Okay, this is not necessary information. Do not give it to me.
Right.
So, I mean, that's just, I had to give up. I was like, I can't do this.
Wow.
They all drive me crazy. And I do remember Nineveh. And she had really long hair that she wore in a braid. And every time she would get anxious or nervous, she would tug on her braid. And I'm like, I want to cut your braid off because every 3rd page I'm reading about you tugging on the damn thing. I mean, there was just so many characters in that series that just set my teeth on edge.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea for you to give that one up then.
Yeah. I did.
Yeah. Well, the first one that I wanted to talk about is one that now, and I'm not sure whether it was truly annoying or whether I was just in the wrong mood to read it. Because I will fully admit that there are some times where I've read a book and I really didn't like it, but it was because either I wasn't able to focus on it or something else was going on or there was something else that I wanted to read instead. And so I didn't really give it a chance.
Yeah, that's happened to me too.
Yeah, but this one I'm really not sure. And I don't think you've read this book. It's called The Magicians by Lev Grossman.
Nope, haven't read it.
Well, and this was one that was recommended to me on several websites that I follow, on another podcast that I listen to. So it's got all of these rave reviews, and so I'm like, oh well, okay, this sounds like a really good book. I probably ought to check it out. And so the basic premise is there's this boy, his name is Quentin, and he's a high school senior. He's getting ready to go to college, and he's going through like all of the he's trying to get into like an Ivy League college, like I think it's Yale or something like that. And so he has to go through all these interviews and stuff. Well, even though he's a senior in high school, he's still kind of likes to read these children's books that talk
Mm-hmm.
about this magical land, and it's called Fillory. Basically, Fillory is Narnia.
Mm.
A magical land. There's 4 siblings that travel to it. That's what these children's books are that he reads about. It's basically Narnia with different window dressing.
Yeah.
That was one thing that irritated me about the whole book, but I digress. Anyway, so he's an older kid, but he still enjoys reading these children's books. He's just kind of a sullen, depressed kind of kid who has no real reason to be sullen and depressed.
Yeah.
Like kind of the tragic genius sort of character. And he's very smart. But then he finds out not only that has been admitted to a college of magic. So he discovers not only is magic real, but he is going to he's been accepted and is going to the premier magic college in the country.
Mm.
But then he finds out that Narnia, basically, is a real place and he gets to go there. These are all awesome things. And he spends the entire book complaining and whining about how life isn't treating him the way he thinks it should and how this isn't going right. And it's like, come on, dude, you're going to Hogwarts and you're visiting Narnia. Your life is
Yeah.
awesome.
For real.
I mean, seriously. And I kept saying, oh, well, it's building up towards something. It has to be building up to him having some sort of big moment where all of a sudden he realizes just how lucky he is to be doing all of this really cool stuff. And that moment never happened. I kept going to the next chapter. I'm like, it's going to happen here. Eventually, he's going to wake up and realize. And, anytime you read a book that talks about kids going away to a magic school, now, admittedly, they're not kids. He's a college freshman, so technically he's an adult, but a young adult. He's not a full-grown adult yet, at least not as far as I'm concerned. You would think every time you think of a kid going to a magic school, you're going to inadvertently compare it to something like Harry Potter, just because it's just part of the genre now. There's a lot of books, especially since Harry Potter, about kids going away to a magic school. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
Which is fine, and a lot of people do it really, really well. I mean, Jennifer Estep's Mythos Academy, kid going to a magic school.
Yes.
Rachel Hawkins' Hexhall series, kid going to a magic school. Both of those were great. And
Yes.
And the reason is because in Harry Potter, when Harry gets to go to Hogwarts, he realizes how lucky he is, and he thinks that it's the most amazing thing that's ever happened to him, and he's right. It is.
Yes.
And he's happy.
Look, I wanted my Hogwarts letter, damn it.
Well, where the heck is mine? But he appreciates it. He realizes, and okay, he gets a lot of stuff thrown at him, finding out about the whole prophecy, the Voldemort coming to get him and killing his parents, all that stuff. So he's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
But he doesn't spend the entire book complaining and whining, and nothing is ever good enough for him. Okay,
No.
He spends Order of the Phoenix like that a little bit, but he gets over it.
Well, he is a teenager. He is entitled to be a little sullen every now and then.
Yeah, and that was really his main issue, and he got over it quick enough.
Yeah.
You didn't spend an entire book just wallowing, and that's all Quentin seemed to do. Nothing was ever good enough, and I'm just looking at this kid and thinking, what is wrong with you? Because and like I said, I don't know whether it was because I was in the wrong mood to read it, and maybe I was just interpreting it wrong. So I actually nominated this book for a tavern book club, and it's not going to be for several months. But I wanted other people who read the same kind of books that I read to read it with me and see what I'm missing.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, the back of the book has like nothing. I mean, and they always do this. They have like all these blurbs of, oh, this book is amazing, it will change your life, and all that kind of crap. But I mean, they have like major things pimping this book. And like I said, I saw several reviews saying that this book was awesome and it was great. And I'm just saying, what did I miss? Because in
Yeah.
order for it to be awesome and great, you have to have a character that really engages you and really makes you care about what happens to him. And for the most part, I was just like saying, okay, somebody shoot this kid already. Or, get a magic sword or something. Just make him go away because he is. And there were other characters that I would have much rather followed.
Yeah.
There's this one girl that he ends up dating, and I don't remember her name, Alice, I think. And she's adorable, and he totally doesn't deserve her, by the way. But she was adorable, and she was smart and funny and magically talented, and I don't understand why she ended up with him. I wanted to smack her. I mean,
Yeah.
she was annoying just for that reason. I'm like, what do you see in this guy? I mean, I don't.
Do better.
You can do so much better. So, but I would have much rather followed her because she turned into a kind of an annoying, depressed character. But that was only because she was with him, and
Yeah.
it was like he drug her down, and I'm like, come on, really? That's how we're gonna play this? You could have done a lot better than that.
Hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, I need to revisit this with a book club just to see if I was wrong, and if I was, then where, because
Yeah.
it just drove me absolutely insane.
Well, it sounds like the kind of thing that would probably drive me up the wall too. Um, my next one actually is from a series that I know you have read,
Hmm.
and that is PETA from the Hunger Games.
Oh, okay.
For some reason, and I'm in the book and in the movie, PETA just annoys me. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. I cannot explain it. I just do not like PETA. I'm like, he makes me want to slap him silly. I don't know why.
Yeah, I never had a problem with PETA.
I just, I loved Gail, and maybe it's because I loved Gail that I didn't like PETA. I don't know. I cannot put my finger on it. I need to reread the books and see if I still feel the same way, because a lot of times this has happened to me before where I'll read a book the first time and certain characters will annoy me, but then on subsequent readings, I find that those characters don't annoy me. It's this other one that does. And there's one of those that's on my list too to talk about. But I need to read them again and see if PETA still annoys me. But I read the books, and then when I watched the movie, maybe it was because I didn't like PETA in the books. I was sort of inclined not to like him in the movie.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know. I could not like PETA at all. He just annoyed me. I mean, every time that he opened his mouth, I'm just like, oh my God, would you just shut up?
That bad, huh?
Yes, and I don't know why. I really cannot explain that one. I don't know. And did you read Twilight? You did, didn't you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, see, Bella.
Oh, God. Yeah.
This book would have been so much better had Bella been better.
Well, I mean, me, for the most part, I can put a fair number of characters from that series on this list.
Yeah,
But
there's a few.
but Bella is the worst offender.
Yeah,
And I
she
don't know what her problem was. I guess she's supposed to be the angsty teenager.
she goes a little too far with that whole angsty thing.
The part where she just I don't remember which book it is. It's been a long time since I've read them, but the part where Edward leaves her and she just spends like 3 or 4 months doing absolutely nothing.
That is New Moon.
Okay. And
Yeah, where the author illustrates this by literally having 6 pages in the book that are nothing but the names of months.
yeah.
That's not writing, that's cheating.
And I mean, I know she's existing. She's going to school. I mean, her father wouldn't let her just stay in her room and not come out. But okay, I know he's supposed to be the love of your life and whatever. You're a teenager. You don't know who the love of your life is yet. Could it be him?
Exactly.
Sure, maybe it's him. You don't know. It could be. I mean, lots of people marry and or fall in love with their high school sweethearts and they live happily ever after. It happens. But you're a teenager. And
Yeah.
bad things happen. Move on.
Put your big girl panties on and deal with it.
Yes. Don't just like pretend like the whole world has ended because of a guy.
Yeah.
And don't put yourself in dangerous situations because you think you hear his voice when you're in bad situations because
Oh,
What?
If I drive this motorcycle off a cliff, I'll be able to see him.
And hear his voice. And what? I don't understand, and I don't see how that's even remotely a good message to say to young girls.
I don't either. I mean, I enjoyed the books, I will not lie, but I can enjoy a book without necessarily liking all the characters in it and liking everything about it. And that was one of the things that just really annoyed me, is that she just kind of rolled over and tried to die because he was gone. And I'm like, look, okay, you love him, I get that, but seriously.
And if she was sad because he left, I would understand that. Of course she's sad. She's heartbroken. Who hasn't been through a breakup and, felt terrible about it? Sure. But then things change, you move on, you figure out something else to do. You don't just feel like your entire life is over. And maybe it's a teenager thing. I don't remember ever feeling like my life was completely over.
I don't either.
Because of a boy. I don't understand. And quite frankly, Edward always kind of annoyed me too.
Well, in the book, he didn't annoy me nearly as much as he did in the movie.
Yeah, I never saw the movies, and I don't think I'm going to.
Well, I wouldn't normally recommend it, but this is one of those things where I would suggest at least watching the first one just to see an example of how not to adapt a book into a movie. Because, let me put it this way, in the book, I was Team Edward. I was Edward and Bella all the way. In the movies, I hated Edward, and I wanted her with Jacob. There's that much difference. Of course, that could be because I don't like Robert Pattinson, and I think he looks like a homeless person, but there you go. But yeah, definitely, I mean, you've read it, you know what happens in the books. You need to see just how bad they screwed up the character of Edward. I mean, not that he was great in the book, but wow.
Yeah, and maybe it's because he's however many years old he is. I don't even remember, but I know he's like hundreds of years old.
Like 116 or something? I don't know.
Okay, so he's older and wiser, whatever, but he always acts so superior.
Yeah.
Always knows better. And okay, sure, maybe he does, but it just seems like I know he was trying to protect her, but it seemed like he was always kind of putting her down too.
Yeah.
Again, not the best thing to teach teenage girls,
No.
Here's a guy who's treating you like you're stupid and acting all condescending, but he's the love of your life, so put up with it.
Yeah, that doesn't work in my world.
Yeah, I think actually Jacob was one of the few characters that didn't annoy me.
Yeah, well, in the book, I mean, I liked Jacob, but in the book, I was more Team Edward. But when it came, like I said, when it came to the movies, it was just like, forget Edward. Let's go with Jacob, because, yeah, this is a much better option here. That's another one of those series that I want to read again, because I think I've kind of outgrown it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I read it again and still think, wow, this was kind of stupid, then I'm going to get rid of them. So I may try to reread those this year, because the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, God, can I just... This whole series would have been much better off if Edward had just eaten Bella in the first book. I mean, it would have saved everybody a lot of trouble.
It would have been shorter.
Much. And, I said something about reading a book and being annoyed with one character and then reading it again and having that completely change. That happened in Catherine Kurtz's Jerini books, which Marita has read a few of them. She hasn't read all of them. I have read all but one of them, and that's because I can't find that one. It's the most recent one that she wrote, which it's been 4 or 5 years since she wrote it. But I haven't been able to get a hold of it. But the first series that I read was the Camber of Culdi trilogy. And when I first read it, there's a character in there. His name is Sinhill Haldane. They find him in a monastery. He's descended from the line of Haldane kings. And they take him out of the monastery and put him back on the throne. And in the first time I read it, he really annoyed me. I'm like, oh, quit whining, yada, 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 whatever.
Right.
But then I read him again. And when I read him again, Camber, the guy that was kind of masterminded getting him out of the monastery and putting him back on the throne really just got on my nerves. It's like, who are you to decide that you need to take this king off the throne and put this guy on the throne? He came across as manipulative, and I don't know, it was really weird that my opinion changed so much from the first time I read it to the second time.
Yeah, I haven't read that series. I've heard you and a couple of other people at the tavern talk about it.
They're really really good. I mean, the premise is that there is a magical race of, they're humans, but they have magic, and they're called the Durini. And the story takes place in basically medieval Europe.
Uh-huh.
And it's during it's kind of like, the church is trying to control the state, the whole, thing like that. And the church decides that Durini are evil and should be persecuted. And the Camber of Culdi books, there's a Durini king on the throne, or queen, king. And Camber himself is Durini. And him and a few of his Durini friends decide that this Durini king doesn't need to be on the throne anymore, so they're going to get rid of him and restore the human kings. And that's kind of what starts the whole Durini are evil thing.
Okay.
And when the first time I read it, they're pulling Sinhill out of this monastery and turning him into a king and putting him on the throne and forcing him to get married and forcing him to have kids. And he's whining about it. He's like, I don't want to do this. This is not what I want from my life, yada yada. And I'm like, they're making you a king. Would you stop complaining?
Yeah.
But then the second time I read it, I'm like, okay, he's in a monastery. He actually has a vocation for God. And when they take him out of this monastery and they're forcing him to get married and have children, which is something that he has taken vows that he's not supposed to do.
Yeah, you can see why that would make him upset.
Right. They're completely just violating his belief system. And on that second reading, when I started coming to this conclusion, I started realizing just how manipulative Camber is. And it continues on through that trilogy and through the next trilogy, because Camber dies, supposedly, but he doesn't really die. He does this spell, and this other guy dies, so he makes himself look like him and takes his place. So, I mean, his whole career is nothing but, let's be a manipulative jerk.
Wow.
And do things that I shouldn't do because I think I know what's best for this kingdom. And I'm just like, you are a tool. I mean, it was one of those things that after I read it that second time, it was just like, you are a total tool. Really. I just really don't like you anymore.
Well, I think we probably should, since we're known to be big David Eddings fans, we should probably talk about some of the characters from, let's say, the Belgariad that are annoying. Because there's a couple of them.
Yeah, see, for some reason, they don't bother me like they do other people. I know a lot of people get really torqued about Polgara.
Yeah, Polgara is one that people go after her a lot, and she is a very strong woman and can at times be very overbearing.
Yes.
I am not going to dispute that. But you also have to consider what she's been through.
Right, and the fact that she has to put up with her father.
Well, that's also an issue. Because if you're going to go between those two specifically, I would say that Belgariad is more annoying because he's the one that seemingly tries to shirk responsibility. Right. Whereas Polgara has basically dedicated her entire life to taking care of the kings of Riva who are, hiding.
Right.
And, I mean, devoted her entire life to doing this. And it wasn't necessarily her choice. She didn't necessarily want to do it. She just knew that it had to be done. And not that she didn't love what she was doing. She cared very much for them. They were her children. All of them. Yeah. But it wasn't easy. And always having to keep an eye out for their enemies because there was always people that were looking for them to kill them. And if you take all of that together, she's going to be a little short-tempered. And she is going to think that she is always right. Because, let's face it, most of the time she is.
She really is most of the time.
Just put all that together with everything that she's been through, she's going to push her way to get what she wants. And I don't see that there's anything wrong with that.
No, like I said, she's never really bothered me like she has some people. And I think it's Marita. I'm not entirely sure, but I think somebody at the tavern cannot stand Arion.
Oh gosh, I don't remember who that is, but I think it might be a couple of people.
And I'm like, he's never really, he doesn't really, he's just sort of there.
Yeah, for anybody who hasn't read him, Arion or Aaron's, which is what he's called at first, he's this little boy that they find along their journey. And since he kind of ends up, he ends up in the company of one of the evil sorcerers. And so they take him with them. And he doesn't really talk very much. And all he says is the word errand. And so since they don't know his name, that's what they call him. Because that's all he says over and over again. But to me, he didn't have enough of a personality really to hate him. He was just, like you said, he was just there. And, eventually some other things happen and he becomes fairly important. But maybe he's annoying just because he's very one-dimensional. There's not a whole lot of character development, really.
Yeah.
Maybe that has something to do with it.
I don't know. It just always struck me as, and I believe it is Marita. I won't swear to that, but I believe she's one of the ones that have said that she can't stand him. And I'm like, it was one of those things where he's just there. I don't really love him, but I don't hate him.
Yeah. I've never felt one way or the other. He was just He was just a character that, helped them do what they needed to do.
I've always just sort of been ambivalent.
Yeah. Now there is one character in that series who I found extremely irritating at the beginning, but I think redeemed themselves at the end, and that's Sinedra.
Yeah, I can kind of see that.
I couldn't stand her at the beginning. She's a princess of Tolnedra, and as an imperial princess, she's used to getting what she wants and doing what she wants. That's understandable. But she can just be a whiny little brat for a good part of the beginning of things. And you can tell that she really likes Garion, the main character. And he's a teenage boy, so he's confused.
I think you could just go with he's a boy who's confused.
But he likes her too, but he's a peasant. So she's like, there's no point in even considering it. And it's just, and this is a spoiler for the book, but you're going to realize who Garion really is fairly early on, so I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
You find out later that he's actually one of the hidden Revan kings. And he's getting ready to, he's revealed basically as the heir to the throne. And this means that not only is he of rank with Sinedra, so they can be together now, right? And everything should be great. But there's treaty. There's a treaty in place between their countries that the Imperial Princess of Tolnedra will wed the next Revan king when he ascends the throne.
Right.
So they've liked each other all along. They've kind of, Garion hasn't really flirted. Sinedra's been flirting her little head off. And now, not only is it okay for them to be together, but they have to. And her problem with it is, well, now he outranks me.
Yeah.
Girl, you've just been given an early birthday present. Deal with it.
For real.
I mean, come on.
You've been given, not only do you get what you want, you don't get a choice in the matter. He's yours. You can't get out of this.
Yeah, and neither can he. It's like, it's like he's been wrapped up and tied with a bow. He is yours. Happy birthday. And she's just all upset about it. And I guess because she doesn't have a choice in the matter, and that might be part of it. I wouldn't necessarily want to have no choice in the matter. But
I don't think that really is, because she even says that, she's always known that she wouldn't get to choose who she married.
That's true. Okay, I'll take that. I'll take that reason away from her. Because she does say that when she's talking about why she can't marry Gary, and when she thinks that he's just a peasant boy. She said that she thought that her husband would probably end up being someone who was a lot older than her and somebody that she wouldn't even have to like, but whoever her father picked for her. Well, now she finds out that it's going to be somebody that she likes a lot, but she's upset now because this person that she's been kind of looking down on for the whole series now outranks her, and that just pisses her all to pieces.
It does. It really does.
I'm just like, girl, you just need to
breathe.
Yeah, and drop down on your knees and be grateful, because holy Moses, it could have ended up so much worse.
Yeah, but she finally does.
Yeah, that's why I said she redeems herself. She comes around and she does her part in saving the world and does it pretty well.
Yeah,
and she's very impulsive, and she's used to getting her way, but you can forgive that because she's an imperial princess. Of course she's going to be used to getting her way. She gets her way whenever she wants it because of how she was raised. That part didn't bother me quite as much, but it was mostly just be happy, you're getting what you want, and quit treating Garion like crap.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it got a little easier when she finally admitted that she really was in love with him.
Well, yeah. Took her long enough.
For real, it's like everybody that reads this is like, oh my God, would you just admit it?
Because it's okay. You're allowed to like him. You're allowed to fall in love with him. It's okay.
Yes. But, I mean, really, and I've heard there's a lot of people that are annoyed by characters in Redemption of Althalis as well. Look, Eddings catches hell about his women anyway, but I've never really... Okay, I've only read The Dreamers once, and I don't really remember any of the characters' names. I mean, I know the Belgariad and the Malorian like the back of my hand, but I've only read the Dreamers all the way through once. But I think there were characters in that series that did annoy me, but I don't really remember who they were. But nobody in Redemption of Althalis bothered me.
See, none of the characters really annoyed me too much in that story. It was just the story itself. And I'm not going to go into it here necessarily because it'd be completely off topic, but it was just, everything just seemed too simple.
See, I love Redemption of Althalis.
I mean,
it makes me laugh.
I didn't hate it. I just didn't enjoy it as much as I felt like I should.
Yeah.
Maybe I just had too high expectations and it didn't live up to it, and so that just made me angry.
I think that's kind of how I was with The Dreamers.
Yeah, I never read that one.
It's not bad.
And I think
I
think the reason I didn't read it was because I had heard a lot of people say that it wasn't very good. And I guess after being so disappointed with Redemption of Althalis, I didn't want anything else to turn me off of Eddings.
Well, I'll put it this way. The first book is really, really good. The last book was really, really good. The middle two books are pretty much the same book twice.
Huh.
It's weird.
It's
like the second book is okay, and then you read the third one and you're like, I just read this. Because it does so much going back and recapping, because he does this thing where the story splits off and follows like 2 or 3 different groups of people. And every time he'll get to the end of one section of the plot, he has to go back to where he started and recap what this group of people were doing while he was telling this other part of the story.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it gets kind of annoying after a while, and it's just like, okay, can we stop doing this and actually progress the story?
Yeah.
So, I mean, but I think there was some characters in that one that did annoy me. Like I said, I've only read it once, so I don't remember their names or anything. And another one I have to mention, and Marita had mentioned this one when I posted the thread in the tavern, and it had completely slipped my mind, but I agree with her completely. And that is Morgan from the Chicagoland Vampire series. He's a grown man. I mean, he's a vampire, so he's obviously much older than he looks. He appears to be in his probably in his 20s.
Uh-huh.
But he spends most of the series when he actually, shows up in the series, acting like a sullen teenager. I mean, at first, when he is first introduced, I really liked him. And then, as the series progressed and some stuff happened, he gets really sulky and male. And I want to punch him because he acts like a kid who's just lost his favorite toy. And he gets all testosterone filled and male over Merritt, who's the main character. And he just has a chip on his shoulder through the rest of the series. And I'm just like, really, dude, grow up. So he kind of annoyed me a lot after the first book. He, like I said, he was fine I think it was the first book. And then he just, I don't know. It was just, and it's not that he's a badly written character. He's well written. He's written to be that way. He just annoys me.
Uh-huh.
But I think that's kind of the purpose he serves, is to be a jerk.
Well, I mean, sometimes you just have characters that are there for that specific reason, to be almost like a foil for another character.
Well, he makes a perfect foil for Ethan, because at first you think Ethan's a complete tool, but then you actually fall in love with Ethan, or I did anyway. And you have Morgan there to remind you why you like Ethan so much. I can't wait. I mean, I know Rebecca's already read them all, so I can't wait till we actually get to Some Girls Bite and can talk about them in the tavern.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly when that one's scheduled for in a few months, I think, too. Well, I want to wrap this up here in a minute, but there's a couple of at least one other character that I find very annoying, but is also one of my favorite characters. So I'm a little conflicted.
Yeah.
And we mentioned briefly the Harry Potter series before, and one of my favorite characters in that book, the whole series, is Professor Snape. Now, it doesn't hurt that in the movies he's played by one of my favorite actors of all time.
Alan Rickman is amazing.
He is 5 different kinds of awesome.
Yes.
And I got to meet him, sort of. Well, no, I was at the stage door. He was in a play in New York, and I was at the stage door. So if by meeting him, you can say I stuck my program between 2 people really, really far, made very, very brief eye contact, and said thank you when he signed it, then I've met him.
Hey, that counts.
There comes a point where you just have to let it go.
Yeah.
And, okay, I understand that the woman that you loved beyond reason didn't feel the same way about you and ended up marrying somebody that you hated with a passion. That's gotta suck. But let's also face it, you brought it on yourself.
Yeah.
If you hadn't been hanging out with the wrong people, maybe she would have stayed with you, or at least listened to you when you were saying, oh, well, that James Potter guy, he's such a jerk. But instead, you started hanging out with the people that eventually became really, really evil people, and she saw that, and she didn't want to have anything to do with you anymore. And then you called her the worst insult in the wizarding world and expected her to forgive you.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen. And so then, yeah, after she ends up dead, which also is sort of your fault. Let's just throw that in there. Her son that she had with the guy that you don't like ends up at the school where you teach. Okay, I get it. That's painful, because this boy here is a symbol of what you never got to have.
Right.
I get it, but it's not his fault. He didn't ask for it. He didn't even know any of this stuff existed until 2 weeks ago.
Right.
and
he doesn't even know about, Lily and Snape until
he doesn't know anything about it. And
until the last book.
Yeah. And, and I do like your dark, brooding characters, which is probably why I like him as a character. I think he's an interesting character. But at the same time, I was so annoyed because I'm saying, you are a grown man. So deal with it.
Yeah.
I know you have lived your entire life with this hanging over your head and feeling incredibly guilty because of all of these things that you didn't really mean to happen, but they just happened, and I get it. That's a horrible thing to have to deal with, but it's not Harry's fault. And you've been treating him like it is his fault from the first moment you saw him. And they did make a whole big thing about how Harry had his mother's eyes and she had beautiful eyes, and seeing those eyes staring out of a face that looks exactly like the guy that you hated for so many years, that's gotta suck. But it's not his fault.
Right.
He's not doing it on purpose.
Throughout the entire series, I did not like Snape.
I was just fascinated by him, and I don't know why.
And even at the end, I understand his motives. I get it. But, dude, this is not a case where the end justifies the means.
Yeah.
You know, you did bad things in the name of good. That doesn't make it okay.
Yeah. Well, that was just one of the things that was funny with all the hype and lead up to book 7, where it was, they had all of those questions. Is Snape good or evil? It's like, well, he may not be evil, but that doesn't mean he's good.
Right. Snape is Snape.
Yeah. He is his own person. He is his own entity.
He ended up doing the right thing, but he did it for the wrong reason.
Right. That's a good
He didn't do it. He didn't do it because he wanted to save the world. He did it for selfish reasons.
Yeah.
You know, which, yes, I understand. In the long run, yes, he did the right thing. That doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, that just because he did his part to help defeat, the most evil wizard of all time, that doesn't make up for the fact that he made this one boy's life a living hell for 7 years while he was in school.
Right.
It doesn't cancel each other out, especially when there was no real reason for it.
Right.
And he kept saying that he thought that Harry was just as arrogant and just as horrible as, his father was. And clearly that's not the case, because nobody else who knew his father thinks that. And you know that he's just projecting all of these things on Harry because he looks so much like his dad.
Right.
And it's understandable that that's frustrating, but you're a grown man.
Yeah, and even if you do think that, you can spend 10 minutes with Harry and find out he's not like that.
Yeah.
I mean, every other teacher at Hogwarts loved Harry. And not just because he was Harry, but because of the kind of person he was.
Because he's a nice kid.
You know, but Snape was just, he was dead set on hating him.
Mm-hmm.
And that clouded his ability to be objective.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah. Well, he didn't really annoy me. I just didn't like him.
Well, he annoyed me because I was just, and maybe part of it, I wanted him to, I wanted him to see that Harry was a good guy. I wanted something to make him turn around. And maybe that's why I like reading Harry Potter fan fiction that makes Snape seem better than he probably really was.
Yeah.
Because I was hoping for this. I mean, he kind of had a redemption, but I was hoping for a better one.
Yeah. Well, again, like I said, he had his redemption, but it wasn't for the right reasons.
Yeah.
You know, he still, in the end, he did not do it for Harry. He did not do it for Harry. He did not do it because he suddenly saw Harry in a different light. He didn't do it because he wanted to save the world. In the end, he still did it because of Lily. Which
isn't a bad reason, but it's just the whole rest of his actions, it wasn't enough.
Right.
And there were several other characters, minor characters, that annoyed me in that series. I mean, and none of them that I really hated, but just little ones, like a lot of the professors. Professor Slughorn just irritated me all to pieces.
Yeah.
Pick a side and stay there, and don't be such a wuss.
Yeah.
Professor Trelawney, I mean, I think that she was better to be around when she was, drunk off the sherry. And maybe she was like that all the time. That's why she was so weird in class. I don't know. But she seemed better to deal with when Harry ran into her in the hallway and she was like lugging all of the bottles behind her.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I don't really think anyone in that series really annoyed me. I did have moments where I wanted to hit Ron upside the head with something.
Yeah.
But I think that's just because he's a boy and does stupid boy things.
That could be.
Because, there are males of my personal acquaintance that I occasionally have an urge to hit upside the head with blunt objects. Because they're male and do male things.
Yeah, I wouldn't call Ron an annoying character. I mean, there were times that I was just like, "Oh, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? Are you an idiot? Are you really an idiot? Oh, you are. Okay, then we'll move on." But
Yeah.
But overall, he was a good guy.
Yeah, he was. It's just, I think I wanted to hit him the hardest when he had that whole breakdown about Harry and Hermione.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're daft. She likes you.
It's so obvious.
Stop being a moron. Her and Harry are just friends.
And always have been.
Harry's in love with your little sister, not Hermione.
Yeah, didn't you realize that? Actually, I don't think he did.
I don't either.
I don't think he figured that out until they kissed after the Quidditch match.
I think it was one of those things where he didn't want to see it.
Oh, maybe.
I think that's the case with a lot of boy things that they do that we want to hit them for. They don't realize things because they don't want to.
That could be.
It's easier to just be oblivious. I don't know. But we've been talking for quite a while. We should probably wrap this up.
Oh, okay. Well, as you can see, there's quite a few characters that we found to be frustrating, annoying, irritating, and otherwise just kind of hard to read about at times. So if there's any characters that you feel the same way about, let us know. There's several different ways you can do that. We have a thread up at the tavern, and the website for that is www.maltavern.com. And you can comment on this topic. You can comment on any of the other topics. We've got a bunch of them going on right now. Most recently, we've started also posting our reading goals for 2013, which, we talked about that a little bit last week. But if you want to set a reading goal and keep up with it with us, feel free to do so. We have a lot of fun doing it. And you also find a lot of new books to read that way, just by looking up the list.
Marita and I seem to turn this into a competition every year.
Yeah, you do.
It's like, which one of us is going to read the most? And I almost beat her this year. And then the whole thing with my grandmother passing away and all that, and I lost a lot of ground there. So
see, I just ignore both of you and try and read as much as I can because my schedule gets so crazy I can't keep up.
I told her last year, I was like, I don't know why I have decided that this is a competition, but it is, and it's on. I'm just a competitive person.
Well, as you can see, we have a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun over at the tavern. So please, if you are so inclined, come and join us there and join in on some of the discussion threads, or start one of your own, and we can talk about any books that you're interested in. We also talk about everything from movies and music to different arts and crafts things, video games. We talk about a whole lot of stuff. So come and visit us there.
Look, I've managed to turn a discussion about a video game into a philosophical discussion on the Random Thoughts thread. I'm just that good.
Yeah, she is good, folks. Really. So for the podcast websites, you can visit our home website, which is www.bibliophiles-anonymous.com, and you can leave comments there. We have also the show notes and any other announcements that we have. You can follow us on that website as well, and then you can receive notification when we update. You can email us at bibliophiles.podcast@gmail.com, and you can also follow us on Twitter, which is at BibAnonPodcast. And we also update Twitter with new topics and a bunch of other things. So follow us over there to get the latest news.
Yep. Especially if I get bored, sometimes I get on there and tweet stuff.
And so next week we will be talking about, as we said before, the next Tavern Book Club book, which is Sabriel by Garth Nix. And as we said, so far we're not anywhere near done. I'm about halfway maybe, and Jess, you said you're about a quarter of the way through.
Yeah.
And so far we're really liking it. So pick up that book and join us next week when we discuss it, because I think we're going to have fun with it.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it.
So until then, bye.
Bye.